What is going on, everybody? I'm Kris Keefer. To the right of me is Jay Clark, and welcome to another RacerX garage build. What you guys are staring at right here, 2021 GasGas EC300i. The I stands for injection, which means direct inject, and that also means you do not need to mix your fuel with this bike. You just dump straight pump gas in this thing, and you're good to go. But I have been riding a Husqvarna TE300i. I'm familiar with what this thing is about. Although there is some differences on here stock, Jay added some parts. Mike from Taco Moto Co did some engine work as well as ECU work. So Jay, tell us about this build and who was it for and how we got here.
So first of all, this 300, they call it a TPI because it's transfer port injection. And Mike will go over all those changes and things he did to address the engine. These bikes, these TPI bikes, we've kind of not really been a huge fan so far, because we like the carbureted ones. We have a really cool carbureted one, 19 Unicorn, got the key-in carb on it, and it runs really well. So we're trying to get these bikes to run as well. And then people think, well, why do they not, they switch from carbs? Because the future, right, all that stuff. So we have to deal with that. It's kind of the way it goes, right? So as far as this bike goes, we wanted to see how good we could get this thing. That's why we had Mike at Taco Moto go over the engine part. And so with the external parts, we use all my same good companies that I work with. ODI Bars, Enduro Engineering has their handguards. We get a full wrap because my buddy Ricky that's going to end up with this bike, he does like to crash. I don't know if he likes to, just that he does a lot.
Get well soon, Ricky, by the way.
Yeah. So he's healing up from his crash a few months ago where he fell off a cliff. Some people have seen that on my gram. You can see him fall into his, he didn't fall to his death, luckily. He just did a finger and then had to get surgery on his ankle. So in the meantime, he wanted to get one of these, and he's going to step down from the 4-stroke and wants to be on a 2-stroke where he's a little more comfortable. Right. He's been on 2-strokes previously, and so he wants to be pretty comfortable on this, and he's really fascinated by the new TPI. This is the XCW version if you were to compare it to the KTM. So it's got the wider ratio tranny, first and second gear a little bit further apart, those types of things. So we wanted to really address some of that. And these GasGas, I think the Ride Red looks incredible.
Yeah, it looks really good, yeah.
The red is so dark and red, and Decal Works did a really good job of matching up that red for us in the graphics. Moto seat cover, IMS large tank, and 3.2. And so it's got a nice fit and feel to it. You do have to relocate the filler for the oil pump. They give you a different kit so that you can, when you fill the oil pump, the premix, it's a little bit sleeker, sits down in there with theirs on there. And like you said, it freaks us out when I was pouring our blue can is pump gas. Yeah. And we have red can for mix. We have a little system at the house, and Spencer was freaking out at me for putting blue gas in this thing. He goes, wait, and then he remembered. He's like, oh yeah, okay. And you know, it's going to take us a while to get used to that. But the bike, we went ahead and did all of our UFO plastic, bulletproof designs, does wheels now, complete wheels with rotors. And so we have those on there with Super Sprockets. TM Designs does the chain and slide. They do an awesome job of those pieces. And got a lot of good protection with P3 on our FMF pipe, skid plate as well. So we went with a lot of those protection pieces. And when you're doing, our trail rides are pretty remote, and Ricky goes on with us in Utah. And so it's nice to have good protection on there with all that we're doing.
Yeah, it's almost too beautiful to go ride off-road. Like, I feel like with the white seat, got the fresh Dunlop AT81 tires, Racetech suspension, and makes me just want to hang out here and look at it for a little bit before we ride it. But I'm going to go ride it, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to bring Mike in here to talk about the engine as well as the get. So, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a total off-road guy, but I have been riding more off-road. It's really nice here in Southern California for that. We get some weather. We get some nice conditions. So we don't have the tight technical riding here in Southern California like some of you guys watching this back east or even up north of us in California. You guys have some really technical, rooty, slimy conditions. For me, this is what this bike is built for. Just like Jay mentioned, his buddy got it for Utah riding, a lot of single track, rocks, slick rock. So for me, as I was riding this, I was trying to keep that in mind. So from the Husqvarna that I rode, and now I'm on this GasGas, what I've noticed, I'm going to bring Mike in here in a minute, is it just feels more exciting. The stock TX300 and TE300, it's a 4-stroke-ish type machine. It lugs, it goes up a lot of hills really nice, but it just doesn't have a lot of excitement, which doesn't make me, as a hybrid type of rider, very excited to ride. So Once I got on this, the first thing I noticed right away is RPM response. It has more RPM response, more excitement, and then as well, when I'm kind of going mid-throttle down some trails, it has some of that RPM response that I need to kind of hop over certain things like some rocks that we have out here in the des, or even some little washouts. So that was important for me. Now, Mike, considering, obviously you rode a stock one, is that what you kind of planned when you built this, you know, I want to say the Get ECU and the head that you put on?
Yeah, we set this up for off-road. This is not a motocross bike. So guys who ride motocross, maybe like with your experience, you come from a track background, this would be a disappointment. Like if you took it to the track, I don't think this would like light you up. But out here, I think you said it well, in this terrain, this is what this bike was designed for, and this is how we set it up, knowing that this rider is a cross-country off-road guy. We completely like dialed this thing in for that type of riding. So if it felt more like at home in this environment, that's what we were going for.
So for you guys watching this, you might not be familiar with the Get systems. More so on the 4-stroke side than the 2-stroke side. I, for one, haven't experienced much with Get on the 2-stroke side. So give us some background about the Get system and how it works and what the consumer, these guys watching on TV, what can expect from this ECU.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the stock ECU unit that comes in these, the Continental unit, the box, the base box, very good box. The thing is that this bike is tuned for the TPI, the side port injection. So what comes stock on this bike is that fuel is delivered right there on the side. What you miss, though, is the fact that, like on a carbureted bike, we're combining the fuel and the air very early in the engine, and so it's being pulled through the throttle body, it's being churned by the crank, and then it's going up the side port. So we're blending the air and the fuel through essentially like a long distance. There's a lot of travel. So when we inject it straight into the sides, we lose out on that. And guys who ride these bikes in their stock form will complain that there's some like dead spots in the throttle. I mean, you rode it, you rode the stock bike. And so some of those shortcomings are really the result of the fact that the injectors are not in the optimal place. Like they're not back where that airflow gets the most advantage. So when we put on the Get system, we relocate the injectors right behind the reeds. And so that mimics exactly what would be happening on a premix bike. You know how you're talking about that. So that fuel then has all of that distance to blend with the air, and then it goes up into the cylinder. So it has a more, what I kind of feel is it feels a lot more like a carbureted bike than a TPI bike. Right. Guys will tell me, feedback I get is like the stock TPI bikes feel very kind of electric, real punchy, real snappy. There are guys who like that and want that. But the relocation with the Get makes the bike feel warmer, more analog, say, than digital. And then with the Get system, and we experienced this, we have this powerful tool with the app, so we can make in-field, on-the-fly changes if we need to fuel and ignition to account for maybe fuel, altitude, riding styles. There's all kinds of reasons why we might want to exploit that power.
So you guys out there, I went out earlier today, did some stuff, and rode around, and I noticed it had a little bit of detonation, a little bit of lean feeling down low. So where I was lugging it up some hills and on low RPM, I can feel a little bit of a detonation. So simply came in, brought it to Mike. He brought his cell phone out, and just like the Yamaha Power Tuner app, but obviously of wider parameters, we changed the fuel, we changed the ignition timing, and it got better. So, and it literally took 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, just seconds, within seconds. And this is the kind of thing where if you don't feel like you're technically competent to do that yourself, you can grab me on the phone and I'll walk you through this. And I do that all the time with guys. It's like the suspension, you know, you get your suspension back from the tuner, and the tuner had to imagine exactly, you know, you paint a word picture to your suspension tuner, and he kind of sizes you up, and he makes some judgments based on his experience and what you tell him. And then when you get it, you know, it's so close but not quite there. You call him, he's like, well, take 2 out here and add 2 there. There are times on these TPI bikes where we're doing the same thing, and a guy will call me and I'll say, you know, add a little here, take a little there, and a couple of minutes on the phone, a couple of minutes in the app, and we can just get right in the pocket of where he likes it. Every rider is different. Every fuel is different. You know, some of the ways we could have fixed that were guys will blend like AvGas 50-50, get some race gas. We're running a high compression head. We're doing some stuff on this bike that push the limits of really pump gas. So when we get to this level, you want as hot a gas. You don't want as hot as you can get, but you want a little hotter gas than like regular pump gas. So We could have fixed that if we had some avgas to blend in or a little shot of some like octane boost. But the fact that we didn't have that available, we can solve that problem in the app. So having the resource with the Get ECU, with the app and with that tunability means you can ride this bike anywhere under any condition, and no matter what's going on with it, I can fix it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Also, we got on-the-fly map switch. I tried map 1 and map 2 today. Map 1 was more for me, a little bit harder hitting, a little bit more aggressive, but still had a lot of control. Map 2, a lot more control, smoother. If you guys are riding really slippery conditions, or maybe a novice type rider that doesn't want a lot of pull, maybe to get away from you, maybe you're getting tired on the trail, it's nice to have that here right by the clutch. You move that, boom, it's easy to use. And overall, the engine for me was the most impressive. Obviously, Racetech suspension, it's built for the guy who's going to ride this. It's a little bit soft for me, but what I do like, and every time I get back on an off-road machine, especially with Racetech stuff, it just picks up all the small little imperfections of the trail really nicely. So anything that is very sharp, really high-speed stuff, picks up a lot of that really nice. Under heavy loads, you guys can see in the slow-mo videos that it does drop. I'm obviously 170 pounds, a little bit more aggressive, so it does move more. But this bike isn't built for me. It's more based on for the, obviously the customer that bought it. I like that I don't ride with big tanks much, but just like what Jay and I said earlier, very narrow, very sleek. Don't even notice this portion up here, the top portion, and just easy to get along with on this motorcycle. It makes it very fun. I came back to these guys and said, I can climb up any hill here. We don't have a lot of traction today, and second gear lugs up anything. It makes you want to go try new stuff. I went up some trails today that weren't really existed, but we made some new stuff, and it was very fun. So, Mike, I think you did a good job with the engine. Give us a little bit of background on where you come from and how you started your business.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So Taco Moto started about 1.5 years ago, and I came from the automotive industry. I've spent a lot of years in that industry, and then always had dirt bikes, and I've always improved and modified my dirt bikes. And then when I started, I got linked up with Athena, and then specifically what is really key, and I want to give a shout out here to our tuner, our map tuner, Derek Harris with HP Racing Development. He is really the magician who makes this magic happen. So there's software and there's mapping. That magic in the ECU was created by Derek. And so when we market these ECUs, we're using his mapping, and he's great and has a lot of experience. And so what you're feeling is that work that was developed by Derek. And so when we started our business, we just wanted to target guys who mainly are riding off-road. We don't. Our target customer isn't a motocross guy.
Not me.
Yeah, right. But you're gonna get a little older, and you're gonna want a bike that's gonna go do some.
That's funny you said, because the older I get, the more I enjoy coming out and do these builds, because it's nice and relaxing. There's not a lot of stress involved trying to have lap time. So it was just a really nice I enjoyed this part of my day just because it's more relaxed. So off-road riding.
Off-road riding, and that's what this machine it was set up for. That's what the GET system is really optimized for. So the guy who is looking at the GET system wants to have map adjustability. Those two maps are very different from each other. The other thing too that's magical about it is the traction control. We didn't really talk about that too much. What's happening there is the ECU is looking at the throttle position data versus RPM, and when those two go out of alignment, it knows that the back wheel is spinning, and when your back wheel is spinning, you're not connected to the ground. So you're pre-crash. If your wheel is spinning, you're pre-crash. If you're an experienced rider like you have the body dynamics and the balance. The gyroscopes in your brain are compensating for that. But if I don't have a lifetime experience of riding dirt bikes, if I only get out once a month, maybe I'm the kind of guy who only gets out a couple times a year, and when I do, I want my machine working. I want every component of my machine in my favor. I want all of the dynamics of the motorcycle. So the suspension, body placement, the bars, the clutch, maybe I want a Recluse CX on there. And so if I have the GET ECU system with traction control, now I've got a machine where all of those power dynamics, they're all sort of weighted in my favor. The machine is working for me, not against me. And then what we didn't put on this bike was the traction control knob. We just preloaded some high-level traction control in map 2.
Which I noticed quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, you felt that. And did you feel like if you imagine you were, one of those guys who I described, like a weekend badass, a guy who's only out a couple times a year, do you believe that would be something that would benefit that kind of rider?
Yeah, so for me, like usually when you guys or we talk about some of these videos, and especially on the moto side, they have, you know, map 1, map 2, and there's not really that much differences between the two. So we talked a little bit about this before I left, but I did notice there was quite a bit of difference between each map, which for me as a customer, that's what I would want. I want something that I could feel, right? I don't want something that is so minute that I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel it, so I'm just going to leave it where it's at. So here is actually, it's nice for map 2 to actually be like, wow, there actually is some traction available. It doesn't hit as hard. Maybe not for me, but at least I know that there is a difference, right?
Yeah. So that's really the fundamental, I think, the killer app as far as the Get goes. So guys will often ask me, is it worth the price of entry? And the Get is the most expensive system out there. There are reflashes you can do to the stock Continental ECU, which are very good. So you have other options as far as tuning your bike goes. The Get is at the top of that pyramid. It's the most expensive, but it also comes with the most technology, app configurability, traction control. One of the things too that can happen is if your bike is running bad or if it's broke, I can get some screen grabs from some of the data and I can help walk you through the process of diagnosing and fixing your bike through your phone. So there's reasons why the Get is the most expensive. There's reasons why maybe a more sophisticated rider, a guy who's a little more, I don't want to say older, but just a guy who's looking for more capability out of his, you know, the bike is a piece of technology. So why aren't the electronics sort of keeping up with that? And with the Get, we can do that.
Overall, very fun bike. Another thing I want to touch on real quick, brake tech. A little bit different than the normal, what I ride on the Husqvarna and the KTM. I didn't notice much with the brake tech hydraulic clutch. Felt fine to me. The engagement point is nice. It's not really an on-off feel. And the brakes, maybe not quite as good as a Brembo. The Brembo has a lot of stopping power. I would say it has a little bit less stopping power, but nonetheless, I really didn't have an issue with the brakes or the hydraulic clutch. So you had something really cool to say about this stuff before we started. So this comes from Spain, right?
Yeah, when I was looking at this bike, Jay dropped it off, and then I was tearing it apart to try to find out what are these differences. This is obviously a red KTM, but like what else is going on?
Oh, they're not going to like that.
It's its own
That's
machine,
okay.
right? It's its own standalone machine. It's got its own plastics. It has its own side covers. Clutch and stator cover are unique. Flywheel is unique. And then the braking. And my first thought was that the braking components, all the hydraulic components, were from India because KTM is partially owned by Bajaj. Is that how you say that?
It's close enough. Us Americans understand that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Apologies to any of our Indian listeners who know how to say it. So I thought that those were maybe a component that came from India, and it turns out they're from Spain. And the company BrakeTech is an amalgamation of one or two other Spanish companies with a new name. And so I think this is a nice touch. The Austrian brand, there's a lot of Austrian parts on here. So I think it was a nice touch for KTM to throw some Spanish components on this historically Spanish bike. I thought that was a classy move.
Yeah, and also too, you guys know they're trying to market GasGas as a little less expensive motorcycle than a KTM or Husqvarna. So I think there's ways that they're doing that to piece this thing together. Obviously, with the cast clamps, a little bit less money, but also more performance. I like that it has some what I use the word in testing is supple. So has a little bit more cushion, not as rigid. Overall, very fun bike to ride. I appreciate Jay and Mike for bringing this thing out there. It's very unique. Haven't had a lot of time on a GasGas Enduro model, so very fun for me. If you guys want to check back to more information, more tests, you can go to racerxonline.com. You guys are already here, or if you're on YouTube, or if you guys prefer and you're old school, like me and Mike here, magazines are still available. 12 issues, $30. Get yourself a free calendar. So a lot of different things from RacerX publication and, of course, online. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys next time on the RacerX Garage Build.